Good evening, and welcome to this Thursday, October 24th, 2024, Matthews County School Board Town Hall meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask that everyone please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As chair, I will be facilitating tonight's town hall. And so what I'd like to do on item 1.4 is to review the town hall procedures. They are located on the back of your agenda if you did happen to pick one up. Each citizen wishing to speak shall provide his or her name and address on the sign-up sheet provided at the entrance to the Brooks Auditorium. A Matthews citizen who wishes to speak will have the opportunity to approach the podium one time and singly to ask a question. A citizen's question should be kept to a maximum of 2 minutes. Questions should not pertain to personnel or individual student matters. School board members and/or the superintendent will address each citizen's question. Once a citizen's question has been addressed, the citizen will have up to 2 minutes for one follow-up question or rebuttal. Citizens who are unable to attend the town hall meeting in person or prefer to submit their questions may do so using the Google form available on the MCPS division website at the Matthews email address. That was by 12 noon today. Please include your name. They were asked to please include their name and address on the form. Those questions will be read aloud and addressed at this meeting if time allows. The meeting will adjourn no later than 8 p.m., although it is the intention of the facilitator that all questions be heard. Any questions not heard will be answered as soon as possible by the facilitator or referred for additional research as necessary. So in item 2, submission of questions. Submission of questions not pertaining to personnel or individual student matters. Again, questions are limited to 2 minutes, and they will be followed up by school board members and/or the superintendent responding to the questions. And we'll begin with our list of citizens who signed up at the entrance. Our first citizen is Amy Bohannon Stewart.
Good evening. I am curious about why does Matthews County Public Schools force staff to use student numbers to refer to students in emails? I learned today that Gloucester schools allow teachers to use initials to refer to students in emails, and I know of another district about an hour from here nearby that uses actual student names in emails. So. Do I go sit down now, or do I stay here?
No, please stay standing.
Okay.
Dr. Daniel, do you have a response on that one?
Sure. I think the protocol was established several years ago with regards to how to refer to students in emails. Most standards would shy far away from using a student's name in an email, because that then becomes foible and personal. That becomes part of a student's record. So referring to students as initials or student numbers then isn't necessarily part of their demographic kind of information. So you can have some of those conversations where necessary in emails. So that was kind of a protocol that was established in Matthews, I don't know how long ago, but it's probably some time ago, to try to attempt to safeguard some student confidentiality and some student privacy.
Okay. And now I get a rebuttal?
Yes, 2 minutes.
Okay. So, and I was a parent in this district too, and I don't particularly like my child being thought of as a number. It's kind of weird as a parent to get an email, you know, just referring to your kid as a number. And I don't think teachers should just think of kids as numbers, and think about how time consuming it is when every time you get an email, and we don't memorize their student numbers, you know, how time consuming it is. You gotta go hunt down, you know, spend 5 minutes or whatever figuring out what kid this is and to process it. So, and workload is high here for teachers, so I hope you can, I mean, if one district nearby that's well-respected can do it, I don't see why we can't do it to save our teachers that time, okay? So.
Thank you, Ms. Bohannon Stewart. Our next citizen is Sharon Fry.
Good evening. Thank you for your service. Actually, I had 4 questions, and when I got here, was whittled down to 1, so I had to make a major decision. Actually, they're very simple questions, so I'll just go with number 4. I was just curious, since we're having trouble with the budget, I was just curious as to how many classrooms we have from K to 7 now that the 8th grade is in the high school. Do we have 2 kindergartens, 2 first grades, 2 second grades? And if we do, what is the student-teacher ratio in those grades?
Again, Dr. Daniel.
I'll
to
take
answer
it.
that. Yes.
In K through 8, we have 3 teachers basically per grade level. It gets a little bit different when you get into the middle school, as you have exploratory teachers and resource teachers. But basically at the middle school level, you have an English teacher and a math teacher at each grade level, and then science and social studies are kind of shared between those grade levels. Let me take that back. There's a 5th grade teacher who is teaching science and social studies, and then 6th and 7th grade, 2 teachers who are kind of teaching then 2 grade levels, if that makes sense. So 5th grade, 1 teacher, 2 contents. 6th and 7th grade, 1 teacher, 2 contents, 2 different science contents. So they're floating 6th grade science, 7th grade science, 6th grade social studies, 7th grade social studies. End result is basically you're having 3 classroom teachers per grade level, K through 8. I forgot the second part of that question. The teacher-student ratio. So the class size is a little bit different marker than student-teacher ratio that you're going to see on the state quality profile. That teacher ratio is going to bring in your exploratory teachers and other staff members into factoring that ratio. But if you're looking at class size, if I remember correctly, our class size basically runs from about 15 K through 8, gets a little bit higher at, I think it's 8th grade is probably our highest class size at about, I think it gets to about 18 to 19 kids.
So there's about 15 students per teacher and aide, and teacher's aide?
Yeah, rough estimate.
So
yeah.
is there 2 kindergartens and 2 first grades?
3.
And there's 3 kindergartens
There's
and 3 first grades?
3 kindergarten classrooms, 3 first grade classrooms, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, etc.
3. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next citizen is Mary Callis Pope. No, did not intend to speak. Okay. We did receive several emails, so I will go ahead and read those. The first email is from Jenna Rowe at 29 Red Maple Trail, Cobbs Creek. I have observed some resistance regarding the YMCA's partnership for a preschool within the middle school. In today's economy, having 2 working parents is increasingly common, and many families are being supported by single parents or grandparents raising grandchildren. As a former stay-at-home mom, I understand the challenges faced by working parents who struggle to find affordable childcare. I have personally watched children so both their parents could go to work. Currently, there are limited daycare options in our community, forcing parents to travel to Gloucester or Hope for in-home care within the county. To attract families to our area, it is crucial to provide accessible daycare services. Additionally, with Matthew's aging population, we need to attract healthcare professionals and other skilled workers to live and work here. The lack of daycare options significantly hinders this effort. The current empty space we have to account for heating, which is maintained by janitors, presents an opportunity for improvement. The YMCA's proposal is a win-win situation, as it introduces essential daycare options to the county. By utilizing this otherwise unused space, we can avoid wasting taxpayer dollars and instead create a valuable resource that attracts qualified individuals to work in the area. It would be fiscally irresponsible not to give serious consideration to the YMCA's proposal and to adopt it. So she did not have a question, but rather a comment. Would a member like to comment? Mr. Dobson?
Keep in mind, you got 5 board members up here, so everybody's gonna have a different take. My take on it is, the school is not a babysitter. A lot of parents may think that, but it's not. I don't have a problem with 4-year-olds coming up here in a preschool program type deal. But 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, that's a daycare center. That is not what's up here. So they're gonna put the bill, so they say, they'll pay for everything. And of course, there would be some things to work out. The thing that I worry about is 3 or 4 years of doing this, if it so goes down, and all of a sudden they don't come up with the funding anymore, that everybody's gonna look to the school to pick this program and carry it up. We are not using any school-funded money on this program, so 3, 4 years down the road, YMCA can't raise the money for the program, and citizens are gonna look to us, which we don't have the money for. We don't have the money for a lot of things. If you notice, there's a lot of work that schools need to have done. So money is short, very short. The budget has been cut $500,000 or more the last 3 years. And the price of teaching goes up. Right now, we're at about $22,390. It actually costs more for every student that leaves here. Every school that leaves here, every child that leaves here costs more money for less children because of the way the state figures out funding. So just because we have less students right now, there is no savings with it. There's a cost to it. So my opinion is, if they want to do a 4-year-old program in a school, I don't have a problem with that. The 2 and 3-year-olds, they need to open that up at the Y. It's just the way I look at it.
If there are no other member comments, I will go ahead and read the next question. Do you have a comment, Ms. Dix?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Mr. Dobson, I hear you on your concerns. I have been spending a good part of my day today considering comments that have been brought to me personally by parents, grandparents, and community members. And I have spoken with several people today, from the schools to the Y and so forth, because of my deep concern over this issue. I'm not on.
You're on.
I am on. Okay, sorry. And here are some things I would like to share, if I may. When I learned that Dr. Daniel and Buzz Lambert were looking at a program for the younger children in the schools, I was excited about it, personally. And then last Tuesday night, this past, we had a presentation by them here, and I thought the presentation explained pretty well what the program would be like. And I have heard concerns over and over again about the space, the empty classrooms that we do have here, that are heated and taken care of, and they're not students in them. We are keenly aware and we are concerned about that also. This seems like, to me, as a Matthews County person, as a educator all my life, most all of my life, and as a board member now, that this is a wonderful place to have this program, if it is voted on. Caitlin Levins presented the other night, and at that time, I listened, I think we all listened, and then there were public comments made that I didn't understand, quite frankly. And I went back and read over the proposal by the Y, and I looked at the numbers. I looked at the survey that Matthews County Public Schools did with parents, 117 of them responding, and the data from that is very clear, and I have a copy of it here tonight if anybody would like to see that who has not. And it speaks clearly to the number of parents that would like to have an educational program as well as a child care. Now, I understand your comment on the child care. I substituted next door at the elementary school when I had 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in one class, and I personally was quite concerned about that at the onset. I thought, how in the world can I handle this? Well, I did handle it with the help of the teachers and aides who were in there with them, and the next year when I came back, now it had its challenges, hear me, but the next year when I came back and substituted, I saw the growth in some of those 2, 3, and 4-year-olds from the previous year to the current year in how they responded. And I mentioned that on Tuesday evening, but I mention it again tonight because I think this is such an important step that we could take. Of the respondents, the 117, 80% of those parents wanted to enroll their children in the educational and enrichment program, 80%. 54% wanted to enroll their children in child care part-time, 74% wanted on-site sports for their children, which the Y, of course, does. The Y has committed funding for this program for this coming year. And I was asked a question recently, what does happen, as you just mentioned, what does happen down the road if money runs out? Well, I tend to look at the glass half full rather than half empty, and I don't know how to answer it. I don't think we can. But I see the support of Matthews County over and over again in supporting our schools, our students, our teachers, and I can't think that it would fail. If anyone does not understand this program, I encourage you to speak to a kindergarten teacher over here. See what their take is on it. I spoke to one just today, or the principal, and see how beneficial and valuable it is to have the younger children educated a bit before they come into kindergarten. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diggs. Ms. Hodges?
First of all, I appreciate, Mr. Dobson, you commenting that each of us has different takes on it. We're individuals, we vote as a board, and we support the vote of the board. As Ms. Stiggs just said, that we had speakers last week about this issue, this topic. I listened to every concern that was raised, pro and con. I always listen and I think about what they have to say and the validity of it. We had a work session on Tuesday and we spent significant time discussing it. And so this is my thinking. We have a need. Clearly, as Ms. Stiggs mentioned, the survey that went out indicates a need. We already have programs in our school building, but after school. So that's not something new. I heard last week we should just do K-12. We have students ages 2 and 3 in special education in our school buildings. So we already have that age in our school buildings. Not in large numbers, I acknowledge that, but we do have those children here. Like I said, we have enrichment programs. The concern I have had for many years is how many children are not kindergarten ready. And it's not necessarily something that parents deliberately do. They certainly are not doing it deliberately, but the expectations of children at kindergarten is much different than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and certainly when I was in school, as I said before, because we didn't even have required kindergarten. It was all just, the parents paid for it and they went privately. The schools have space. We have significant space. We also, in thinking about this, I heard last week a parent say that she was sending her child to Montessori preschool and will likely keep her child there because she did not want to have to change, her child's friends, her surroundings, and for that reason she will likely keep her children there. And for that same reason, as we try to build our student numbers, I believe if they start here in our facilities, they will likely not leave here when they start kindergarten. They will likely not go to a private school or somewhere else because they've made friends, just for the reason the parent mentioned last week. They've made friends, they have routine, they have a comfort level. And that was really my deciding that pushed me over into supporting this program. And finally, to speak to Mr. Dobson's point, he's exactly right. Right now, the less students we have, the more money it costs the taxpayer, the local tax money. And so the more students we have, the more money we will receive from the states. And so that, for a tax reason, I believe will, if they stay in our schools, that will help our numbers in our schools and therefore be less of a demand on our local monies, and the state will reimburse us for a higher level of students in our school division. And so for those reasons, I do support having this program in our campus. Thank you.
I think I'll go ahead and read another email that came in.
Make another comment.
Yes, Mr. Dobson.
What you talked about receiving money for that program, you wouldn't receive money for the program for those children until they entered kindergarten. That's right. So keep that in mind. We would not be getting money from the state with them in that program. Once they go into kindergarten, then we would receive the money for those children.
Thank you. Okay, move on. I will read a question from Meredith McDougall on 427 Seaford Lane. Since data and research has shown that early intervention saves money for school districts in the long run, and improves educational outcomes for at-risk students, wouldn't a program that is already funded and has promised to not need financial support from taxpayers be a win-win for our community? And why wouldn't you want to support a community partnership program like this? Well, there've been many comments made already, and I'll chime in with mine. We do have a need in this community. That was borne out by the survey. This is common knowledge. For a myriad of reasons, parents in our community need care during the day for their children. And some of them, according to the survey, many of them very, very young, dipping down into the 2-year range. The question comes in, for me, on the assumption of risk. There is no one on this board or in this room who does not want the best for every single young child in our community. But where does the risk fall in this scenario with the proposed partnership? As Ms. Diggs said, she's a glass half full. Unfortunately, I guess I have to claim the other half of the glass. I'm the half empty. In the scenario, were it to occur that we ran the program successfully, and by successfully, I mean more and more students were able to be served by the program, possibly, as in other models, younger and younger students would be being brought in, more and more teachers would be hired to serve. In the event that we had 4 or 5 years from now, a successful program with an increased number of students, an increased number of teachers, but for whatever reason, a sudden inability to fund, because I do not assume this can be funded in perpetuity. I don't think that's a realistic assumption, and we're not being promised that, and I don't think we could be. But say in a very intermediate run, the money was not able to be had, definitely that program would be entrenched. The community would demand that it be continued in our building. At our current trajectory of student decrement, and I will just say this, and I brought this up at our work session, let's say we do great and we stave off future decrement and we maintain our 770 population. With an increase of, say, 40, 50, 60 very young students needing to be served, with ratios that would require increased teacher quantity, we would feel compelled to ask the county for those additional funds beyond our budget, because those students would not be subsidized. That would have to come from local. I'm concerned that that would be a very big challenge for our school division and for our county and our citizens. Now, when Ms. Levin spoke to us the other day, I asked her specifically, and many of you were here, are you so dedicated to this program that if it were not able to happen in the schools, would you seek a site in our county, an alternate site? Yes. I have no doubt that if another facility off our premises, out of our jurisdiction and potential responsibility down the road, served those children, that those children would come willingly to MCPS. They would not opt, my feeling is they would not opt to go to another division necessarily. I'm not convinced that being in our building is the critical piece. I think what is the critical piece to many parents in our community is that there is an option for them. I'm not convinced that it's in our building. I think that it is compelling that it is in our county. So that is what I'm considering on this. I'm trying to weigh all of that out. Any other members who have anything to say?
Keep in mind, liability insurance. Liability insurance is not cheap. And the problem is, we could say that they're responsible and the school can't be sued, but they're gonna go after whoever has the deepest pockets in the event something happens. So that's something you always have to keep in the back of your mind, is liability. So that's another reason that it's not necessarily a good place to hold it, because now we're opening the county up for a lawsuit that could come very easily. You know, little children fall, get hurt. And that's my major concern.
Mrs. Hodges?
I think you probably get a sense for our conversation 2 days ago in our work session, how we've looked at many facets of this program. But we have so many activities in our school already. We have intramural basketball that will probably be starting up soon, that are here every Saturday, kids outside of school, and practice outside of school after teachers go home. We have voting in our school, all 3 schools. We have, our auditorium is used for so many activities, and they use not just the auditorium, but our classrooms for prep, especially when there's a play. They use both the art and the band room to prepare. We have enrichment programs already after school. All of these things, you know, put us out there as far as liability. Clearly, anything you have in the schools, it's a liability issue. And for my mind, I think, and I've said it, the preschool, I believe having it here outweighs the negatives. And one thing I did not say, I think that Ms. Diggs mentioned, is when we know that our students are as kindergarten ready as possible, that is less stress and demand on our kindergarten teachers. They have so much that they have to get these children ready for by the end of the kindergarten year, and they all come in at different levels. And when they're working with students that they need to raise up, it's less time that they have to work with students that are already on grade level or on task. So my theory is that it's less discipline problems, and that would be off school as well as in our campus. But I do believe that would ease up the demand and the burden on the kindergarten teachers if we could offer options for our children to be more kindergarten ready. Thank you.
Ms. Diggs?
After talking to a kindergarten teacher just today, and reading her letter about the first day of school this year, which was entertaining. If any of you saw it on Facebook, it was extremely entertaining. Sadly so in many degrees, because you people who have little ones or had little ones, you know how you have to direct them. And that was one thing that she said that would be so beneficial. One other thing I missed earlier on, a lady contacted me today about, she was a 37-year veteran teacher, and she asked me to please support this because of the value she saw in it as a teacher for all of those years. And she said she would be very happy to volunteer her time and her money to facilitate such a program. And I don't see you as half empty, I can tell you. I think this is an opportunity for Matthews County, other than the things we offer at the high school, with sports programs, with governor's school, etc. We want to increase those things, but I see this as an offering to parents who are looking for a place to come and live. And childcare is a huge thing in that, and early childhood development, however the programs run. So I do believe, if I'm correct, that the presentation the other night, that they do have the insurance to take care of it. And I do understand what Mr. Dobson said very well, and you also, about the liability on our premises. But we do have lots that goes on in the schools, and we pray that people don't get hurt. Thank you.
I'll read another email that came in. This is, the citizen requested to remain anonymous. I have concern with the Y proposal for a daycare in the THMS building. Number one, why this building? There are other options in the county that should be investigated. Is the Y only interested in THMS because it would be free to use to include utilities, supplies, etc.? Number two, has the board considered the likelihood of increased foot traffic and phone traffic in the THMS main office due to a Y daycare in the THMS building? The Y may say the daycare will not interfere with daily workings of the school office, but after learning the high school main office does experience foot traffic and phone traffic from Head Start, it causes questions and concerns from the office staff. Suggestion: the Y could purchase the Old Boys and Girls Club. They have already been using this facility. This will alleviate interference with the THMS school day or summertime facility work. Would anyone like to respond?
Keep in mind that the class, the program they want to hold will not happen during the summertime. So they're going to have to find people to take care of the children during the summertime.
Excuse me, Mr. Dobson, I believe Ms. Levens did address that point and said that if that need were there, they would fill in that gap. They would attempt to fill in that gap for year-round. I believe that is what
Well, I thought she said that they were going to stop it for the summer if
The proposed plan is for 36 weeks. We inquired about year-round care, which most of the respondents need. And Ms. Levens did address that point, that they would attempt to close that.
Because I remember seeing the 36-week program.
That is in the initial proposal, yes.
So if they find a place for the summertime, I suggest using it all year round then. So that's a problem they may have or may not have. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I was under the understanding that 36 weeks here at the school, and then they'd have to find something for the summer or not find something, I guess. So that was up in the air at the time. So basing that, if they find another place, we ought to use it all year round. I don't have a problem with the 4-year-olds. I have a problem with 2 and 3-year-olds. And if they looked at this in perspective, the way I would say is they want 14 children for 2 classes. And what I would do, and I'm sure there's plenty of 4-year-olds out there that they could find, and they could have 14 kids in that program. And I would not object to that at all, because that's a Head Start program. It's not, but it's set up like a Head Start program. And they would be teaching those kids those kind of things. I don't have a problem with that. The problem is with the 2 and the 3-year-olds. That's a daycare center in my mind, because they want to run they want to run later at night than what the school is. So school gets out here approximately 3 o'clock. Those kids would be here to, I believe, 6:30.
So I believe it was a quote of 6:30 to 6.
Yeah. So you got another 3.5 hours, the kid's in the building with nobody from the school being involved. So that's another problem I have. So, but with the 4-year-olds, 14 kids, I thought that would be a good deal. And then find they could use their own place for the 2 and the 3-year-olds. But like I said, I don't have a problem with the 4-year-olds.
Yes, Dr. Daniel.
Just to clarify 2 points, so the proposed location for the preschool would not be on the Thomas Hunter side of campus. The second component, I think when Ms. Levens talked about summer programs, she talked about the Y already offers multiple camps and other summer activities that they use to provide support to families and outings and enrichment. And so I believe, if my memory serves correct, that they were looking to, they would use those types of programs to provide the support over the summer for child care activities.
Do you recall that those programs would serve 2-year-olds?
I don't know.
I don't know, okay. Mrs. Hodges?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
May I?
Yes, Ms. Diggs?
One other point that maybe you've all heard, maybe you have not, but in the presentation the other night.
Excuse me, Ms.
Am
Diggs.
I on?
Yep.
No. Okay.
There you go.
In the presentation that she gave the other evening, she did say that children from families, low-income families, that they work with social services to provide for them. And as I was communicating further with them, they said that grants can happen, they seek out grants, and no child is going to be left out if they want to participate. So I think that's an important point to make. Thank you.
Well, to that point, just to be clear, the maximum number of students in the first year, which they would seek to grow, but the first year was 14. So I believe when I was asking the question about admission process, specifically I remember how I used the word choose, and Ms. Levens did not care for that word. However, if you have 20 students, parents with children who are in need of these types of services, there would have to be some way to select which students would be there. And she did clarify by saying at that point, it, correct me if I'm wrong, come down to first come, first serve. Okay, all right, just wanted to clarify that. Right, without further questions, we do have another email that came in from Ben Abbott on Seaford Lane in Matthews. As a parent of toddlers in this county, my wife and I strongly support this community partnership with the YMCA. I would like to know, has the Matthews School Board met with the Lancaster schools and visited their program on site there to see in person how great this would be in our community? As a taxpayer and parent, this seems like a win-win for our county. Thank you in advance. I will say that I have not gone out this year, but I went and spoke with Lancaster principal discussing the Kids First program a year and a half, 2 years ago maybe now. So I have not seen, and I certainly haven't seen the new facility that the county decided to build as a result of their program. Mrs. Hodges.
As far as visiting it, no, I have not visited Lancaster's program. However, the program Kids First that Dr. Gibbs referenced, I was in close contact with the superintendent of schools in Lancaster when that was in place, Dr. Steve Parker. And it's because of that Kids First program and Dr. Parker that I started paying attention to the data, the research on the difference that particular program could make in readiness for kindergarten for children who are in 2 or more generations of poverty. I've also spoken to the superintendent at Middlesex schools about their program. And theirs is as I understand it, has to do with income. And if you're under a certain income, your child can go to the preschool program at the school. If your family is above that, it's just not available to you. So I have not visited, but I've certainly followed it and have been in touch with people that have been in charge of it. Thank you.
I have not visited yet.
I haven't either, but where was that other program at, Northumberland? There was a program, it might have been Lancaster. Didn't some of the data show that it didn't have no effect when we were discussing that last year?
Go ahead.
That I see, this is the Kids First program, and again, I want to clarify, not every preschool program is the same.
Right.
Curriculum makes a difference. So when we say preschool and preschool and preschool, they're not interchangeable. You need to know what the curriculum is about and how they teach it and what the outcome measures are. But to the point about that one, it was Lancaster's, and Middlesex had it as well. 2 or more generations of poverty, getting them kindergarten ready. There was data that showed that it did make a difference. What it did not show is over, when you talk about 4th or 5th grade, if it was long-term or not. But it showed by 3rd grade that those students in Lancaster did sustain the gains that they made in the program.
Okay. I know there was something I couldn't remember.
Northumberland did not use that program.
Well, I didn't know, like I said,
Yeah.
I could remember the program, but I couldn't
Right.
remember where it was at. Okay.
When I was speaking to the principal about the program in Lancaster, they discontinued the program. When the funding ran out, they discontinued the program, and they absorbed the students into existing programs. And I'm not sure by what mechanism you would do that if you had 50. But I said, can you talk to me about the data of these students long-term? How have they done? We want to, test the validity of this. This is a big investment. What would prove up the validity? And she had mixed results. She said for some kids it was fantastic. For other kids, this is just the verbal that came from her mouth. That's all I have. That's all I could get. So I took it. For some kids, they were going to be great anyway. You could just tell. I said it would be really great to see where they were when they started into serious academics, to see if we can tie that together and see if there's a causal relationship there. And unfortunately, because there is no data currently that we can review, we just have narrative, anecdotal, and that's fine. These are professionals looking at the children and making assessments. But I think the truth is going to be in what that principal told me, is that, some kids were going to be successful regardless. Other kids, it was beneficial. Other kids, it was hard to tell. They're still struggling. I'd love to have some tangible data. I think part of the Kids First trial was also bumped up against COVID, and then that really threw a wrench into the data collection.
But the data from the Kids First program,
Kids First, yep, separate program.
separate program.
Right,
That
right, all separate.
showed, but I do have the data from that, and I think I shared that in the past. But the preschool, I don't know in both Middlesex and Lancaster before the why and what, and the difference it made. I
Right.
have not followed that.
Right. Any other comments from the board? Dr. Daniel?
Sorry, no, I was looking at trying to find some data.
Okay, find it, let me know.
Okay.
Ms. Hunley, do you have anything to add? Okay, all right. We are early. I noticed that some people came in after we had started. Is there anyone who has not been able to ask a question who would like to approach the podium? Members, do you have anything additional? Pardon me? Yes. Please state your name and address. You'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Pat Lipinski. I live at 568 Seaford Lane in Matthews. I'm a retired school principal, so I know about data. I know about all this stuff that you're talking about. Last time we were here, Dr. Daniel was sharing test scores. We were sharing graphs. And one of the things that came up was about the first graders, the inability to actually read some of the questions. So how do you plan to address that? You see, when you have children, and it is proven, there's a lot of research that proves this. You start them off, they become ready for school. By the time they get to kindergarten, they move on and they start reading. You know, you learn to read from kindergarten to 2nd grade. 3rd grade, you read to learn. So it is an essential component. And I think for your test scores, that's where you need to get started. You need to start approaching it, because right now you're not doing that, and you need to. It's seriously, very serious. So this child care program that's been proposed by the YMCA, that's been paid, that's not going to cost schools any money, and hopefully, God willing, it never will. I don't know if it will ever stay all the time at the schools, but it is the most conducive environment for it. And I think Dr. Daniel knows that's true. You know, my experience has been that it is very worthwhile. I was a principal in Arlington. We had all these programs in my school, and I actually saw with my own eyes what it actually did with kids. So that's my comment.
I want to thank you for your comments shared. I could not be more in favor of lifelong learning, and we know it starts early. So mom and dad do so much at home that they can do, but these programs, like we said earlier, especially for generational poverty, I think it's imperative for them to have extra help. I've seen it firsthand here in Matthews County at the elementary school, and it makes a big difference. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan?
Yeah, just a couple of closing comments here. And let me preface my comments with, I have 3 grandchildren, 10 years old, 6 years old, and 2 years old. So I am very interested in the future of our kids. I have a very, very deep concern for all of our students, all of our children, all of our students. Excuse me. They are the future of our community, the future of our county, the future of our country. So I have to be concerned. I do recognize the need for child care, daycare, whatever you choose to call it, in this county. There are not a lot of options. So I do recognize that need. I think the YMCA is being very generous with their offer to provide a program, whether it be in public school facility, on our campus, or whether it be somewhere else. I do think that their interest is in the right place. They're looking towards the future of our kids. As far as the facility, whether we use public schools, whether they choose a private entity for their building, for their facility, I think the interest is still the same. They are trying to do or trying to provide a service for the people in our community that will benefit our youngsters, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, whatever the age. I believe it would be the same outcome no matter where it took place. Liability. Liability is always a concern. I think we all know that whether we are a public school, a public business, or a private residence, anything that occurs on our property as far as an accident, injury, anything of that nature, I think we all realize that the property owner is going to be held responsible. I don't think there's any question there. So it's a risk we take. It's a risk we take every time we have a ball game, every time we have I guess we still have PTA meetings or what have you. Anytime that the public gathers in a public school building, there's always some risk of liability. Is someone going to fall? We hope not. Curriculum. I understand that the YMCA intends to provide for lack of a better term, I'll say a learning curriculum for these students, regardless of the venue, whether it's in a school or a church or what have you. They want to begin these children to start at least some basic learning. I have no objection to that. Has a lot of pros, has a few cons. My biggest concern is when we talk about putting it into a public school venue. My biggest concern is this. And once again, I'm a grandparent, so I love kids. Where does the responsibility begin and where does the responsibility end of your public schools? If we're going to begin, we already have a 4-year-old program, I believe, in place, and now we're looking at extending that back to 2- and 3-year-olds. At what point do we say, well, let's invite the 1-year-olds, let's invite the newborns? That is a little concerning to me. Not that I am not an advocate for children, because I am. I love kids, and they're the future of everyone. But where are our responsibilities as a public school and as a school board? Where do they begin and end? How far do we take this thing? I guess that's my biggest concern. And maybe after having said these things, maybe I'm not a real popular person. If that's the case, my apologies, but I just have to consider, where do we draw the line? Are we gonna take newborns? What do we do? That's my biggest concern. As far as helping the kids, absolutely. Anything that I can do to help a kid, I'm gonna do it. But that's just some of my thoughts and concerns. Thank you.
I just want to comment, and thank you for your comments. And I'm sure any of you who know me know that my broken record is that we should have as many children as possible reading on grade level by the 3rd grade. We know even if we have 80%, which we've had that in the past, that we still have 20% that is not reading. And I'm always mindful of that, because what we know, if they're not reading on grade level by 3rd grade, there's a higher risk for dropping out. There's a higher risk for incarceration. There's so many risks. And so I just want to say that publicly yet again, that if they're ready for kindergarten, if they're kindergarten ready, then there's a greater chance that they will be on task by 1st grade and 2nd grade and so on. Thank you.
I think some of the people need to talk to your churches. I remember, and I was not a member of the Kingston Church at the time, they used to have a daycare, and it was wonderful. My son went, he learned a lot. I would suggest to anybody, talk to the churches and see if you can't get them to take on a daycare like Kingston Parish had years ago. It was a very, very good program.
Are there any more comments from members? There being none, I'll call the town hall adjourned. Thank you very much for your participation.